All right, it is draft week. Chris Hassel joined by Brady Quinn and Pete Prisco, and Pete has his what they should do draft, which is Pete being a GM for all 32 teams like he thinks he is anyway.
You know, this is my favorite time of the year. Like this particular day, this mock draft, no disrespect to Ryan Wilson, but there's so many out there, it's hard to pick which one I like the best. This is my favorite one because Pete gets to actually put on the general manager hat, and then people just rip him apart on social media. It's fun to watch.
If they do it today, it'll be a second day in a row they rip.
Pete, you said that NFL people act like it's so complicated, but the reality is it isn't.
It's just football. That's all it is. It's just football. It's not right. I couldn't go into somebody's brain and operate on them. I can't be a mechanic because I don't know what to do with a car. But I can tell you who's good in football and who isn't. Sometimes, like the teams, I'll be right. Sometimes I will be wrong. You will be right. Even though you never admit you're wrong, you will be wrong too.
Well, let me just go back, take a step back through this entire process, because there is the evaluation of who's the best prospect and then how it matches with the team. Are there times throughout the course of this where you basically picked a player because you said, I just think he's the best available, they don't need it, but to me, I don't think he goes past this point?
Probably some spots, yeah. But Brady, here's what we don't know, and you don't know and I don't know, is we don't know what's inside the kid. And the NFL spends so much money to do the work evaluating the kid. Is he going to be the same when he gets the money? Will he change? Will it make him play harder? Will it make him be one of those guys that goofs off all the time? So we can't get into their heads like they can. They don't do it as well as they think they do either, but they have a better idea than we do.
Look, the medical is the one thing we really don't know that
Correct.
plays a big impact on a lot of these players. There is the what's inside the kid and all that stuff. The reality is none of that matters, because if you're getting drafted to the Jacksonville Jaguars, unless this organization shows that they can actually put together a team, develop guys, and help them move forward, it doesn't matter how good you are, whether you're Trevor Lawrence, who's one of the best prospects we've seen at the quarterback spot in quite some time, or whoever they draft #1 this year. It doesn't matter. It's not going to pan out as well because the organization stinks, and that's just the reality of it.
So, like The Rock, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It matter if you change the. Seattle's organization stunk for a while too. They changed the feeling in the building. That's what you have to do. Well, they got rid of Urban. Now you change the feeling in the building.
And Pete has them taking #1 overall, Evan Neal, the offensive lineman out of Alabama. Why offensive line over edge here?
Because I think when you look at this draft, Evan Neal 5 years from now will be one of the best left tackles in the National Football League. I think you plug and play. And I know they signed Cam Robinson to the franchise tag. He's got a 1-year deal. The right tackle is a disaster. Jawan Taylor's been bad the last 2 years. They still have Walker Little. If you go to camp and you draft him, it's a pleasant problem to have.
Right.
You have 4 big people, and 5 if you count Scherf, because they signed him as well. 5 big people decide who's going to play, and in front of a quarterback you're trying to develop. So I went with that. Plus, here's the thing with Hutchinson. Hutchinson, to me, is one of those guys, I think he's outstanding at what he does, but has he hit his ceiling because he's so good with his hands, and gives him a big advantage in college football. The NFL is not going to be quite an advantage, and I wouldn't take Walker. And particularly in their defense, you talk about scheme, Brady, they're going to play like Tampa Bay. Where does Walker play in that defense? He plays a 5 technique.
Well, there's that. I mean, and again, I think he's more your traditional, 4-3 defensive end.
Correct, but they don't.
They've got Josh Allen. They've got Caleb Von Chase on. That's not really their scheme.
Arden Key.
Well, and Arden Key. So you sort of look at what they have up front and you go, do they really need that edge position? I just think this is more of an investment into, what you drafted last year in Trevor Lawrence. They need the help with the offensive line protection. We tend to only talk about Trevor Lawrence. What about the rushing attack? Whether it's Josh Robinson or Travis Etienne, who we didn't get to see at all last year, helps those guys out as well. I think you're starting to see more offensive lines in the NFL, and especially because you only usually dress about 7 on game day. You're just trying to get the best 5 out there. Like, we could sit here and look at Evan Neal and say, well, he's going to be a tackle, and he will be. But you might then look at Walker Little and say, all right, can we move him down inside? Like, does that give us the best chance to protect Trevor Lawrence and give us a rushing attack to make us productive? So I could see them going this direction. The only question I'd ask you is Ike Ekwonu. Did you think about that here?
He's a possibility. I think it's real close between the two of them. I went with Neal because I think he's a better pass protector. Oh. I think Ekwonu's a tougher, more physical player. You could probably use him better the first year as a guard, although Neal has played there too. I just think in this scenario, I would go with Neal. Play him at left tackle or play him at guard because for a year and then he takes over.
This is Pete Prisco's Who They Should Draft mock. Moving on to #2 in the Detroit Lions, and as we've seen in many, many mocks from a lot of our experts, if the Jaguars don't take Aiden Hutchinson, he goes #2 to Detroit. That's what you have here. But you mentioned a ceiling. You think that he might have a lower ceiling than some other #2 overall picks?
Well, look, I don't think he's one of the Bosa brothers. I just don't think he's in that class. I don't think he's Chase Young. I think he's going to be a notch below. When I look at guys like him, I see Grant Wistrom comes to mind. Somebody like that, really good player. Chris Long, really, he's a little bigger than Chris Long, but a really good player. Patrick Kearney, remember Patrick Kearney?
I see more Jared Allen when I watch him on tape, as far as how he.
Good comparison. Patrick Kearney, remember Patrick Kearney?
Kearney as well.
Yeah, those are the kind of guys I see him as, and it's not a knock on him. I think he's going to be a 10, 11 sack guy for most of his career. I don't think he's ever going to be 18, 19. I don't think he's going to be 16, 17, 18.
You do see that player in this draft?
Yes, I do. But a lot of other people don't. This is the guy I do.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about that when we get there. I think Aiden Hutchinson could be that, honestly. I think Aiden Hutchinson is the type of guy that really fits what Dan Campbell is trying to build as far as from the culture within his organization. Like, he hits that to a T.
I agree.
As a leader, his work ethic, everything he did to come back from his injury. And it's funny because you hear people talk about, oh, is he a one-hit wonder? Well, why can't this just be the beginning of what he could be as an edge rusher? Like, we tend to look at other guys who flash, and we go look at the upside. Then we look at a guy like Aiden Hutchinson and we say, well, is this as good as he's going to get? Why can't this just be the beginning for him?
And he is a better athlete than he gets credit.
He's a much better athlete.
By the way,
go look at his testing.
No, I don't think he's going to be.
That.
I don't think he's going to be bad, and I would pick him in this spot if I'm the Lions. It's good to have a local guy too, as well. I think that helps them a little.
Put some butts in the seats. He's a Michigan guy, obviously, from the state of Michigan, went to Michigan.
First of 2 picks for the Lions in this mock. No trades in this mock, right?
No.
All right, no trades. Sticking with it. So the Texans are coming up here at 3. Is this the guy you hinted about who could go get you 15 sacks eventually?
Yeah.
Excuse me, Kayvon Thibodeau?
Yes, exactly. And there's the whole narrative about him that he's lazy, he doesn't play as hard, he doesn't do this. I went back and watched those games. There are moments where it's not as, probably the effort isn't as great as it should be, but I don't buy any of that others. I think he plays hard enough at times. I don't, look, when I say
that wasn't a very.
No, when I say that, there's an example of a play. I sent it out. He was locked in man coverage on a back, and the back beat him, got inside him, caught the pass, and instead of
why you put him in man coverage?
That's exactly my point. But instead of turning and sprinting to go get the back, he kind of jogged after him. Those kind of plays.
Look at the odds though, from number 2 to number 3 to number 4. That would suggest that most people don't think the Texans would go for an edge rusher at plus 900.
Yeah, I don't understand that because they clearly need to get one. And Lovie Smith, his whole DNA is rush with 4. That's what he's been his entire career. To rush with 4, you need a guy like this who can come off the edge. He's the best edge player in the draft in terms of pure edge rusher, in terms of explosiveness. He reminds me a little bit the way he bends of Von Miller type. He's not Von Miller because that's special, but he's that type. See the way he bends there?
Yeah, that's one of his sacks he got in this game. You can go back, watch when he beats the tight end like he did versus Fresno State.
I saw he beat the tight end in against UCLA too.
Yeah, he's beating up the USC offensive line. I mean, you start kind of going back through it. And again, the only criticism is, and this is out of his control, is he didn't play versus the best talent. He didn't play versus Ohio State last year. The Pac-12's weak. I know you like to stay up late and watch your Sun Devils, but that's the reality of it.
And they're weak.
It's weak. And you go back through his 7 sacks and some of his pressures he got, and he was great at getting pressure. He wasn't, great at getting to the quarterback. At 7 sacks, I would say almost half were versus not a tackle. And especially if you look at the other half that were, it wasn't the best tackles he was going up against. So,
but you could say that about Hutchinson when he played in the biggest game of his career. He didn't do much in that game
Georgia.
either.
Yeah, but you go back and look at what he did versus Ohio State. Look at what he did versus Iowa.
I get it.
Look at what he did throughout the course of the season. Look, we can nitpick all we want. There's no doubt Kayvon Thibodeau has a ton of talent, a ton of ability. It's whether or not it will translate at this particular spot. And if it will for the Houston Texans, it makes sense from a scheme standpoint. It just comes down to whether or not it's going to translate there. They've used other high draft picks before in edge positions. It's worked out, maybe it wouldn't, depending on what you view J.J. Watt as. But with J.D. Van Clowney, it didn't really work out the way they're hoping.
When you look at this, it could be an offensive lineman because they have an issue at right tackle. That's a possibility as well. Some people have mentioned corner. Nick Caserio comes from the New England tree. They don't put that kind of premium on a corner in that system. So I don't think so. I think it's going to come down to tackle or edge.
I almost wonder if there's not a surprise spot here. And if they didn't fall in love with a big D tackle like a Jordan Davis or someone like that.
I love Jordan Davis.
Well, you look at Lovie Smith, and you talk about rushing with 4. Well, they like to have that anchor, too, somewhere in the interior.
But more Tampa, too, though, and the way they play, they don't play big, why they play up the field a little bit. I think he's going to be good.
I think the second we get to see Jordan Davis not have to 2-gap like he was asked to do in Georgia, it's going to be
we're thinking alike on that one, by the way.
Okay, Texans have the 13th pick coming up as well. Up to the Jets, the first team with multiple top 10 picks here. The Jets also have the 10th pick. But at number 4, it's Ike Ekwonu.
Yeah, and this goes back to my theory on there's only so many big people in the world who could play offensive line in the National Football League, and he's one of them. I could have gone with Sauce Gardner in this spot. I think they need a corner. But again, they're a system that doesn't put a real premium on the corner. Remember where Robert Saleh comes from, that Seattle type of defense where you don't put that premium on the corner. So I passed on the corner and went with the big guy. And I think he plays right tackle for him. Or, we'll see what Becton does. Becton didn't play last year, was hurt much of the year, out of shape. Becton comes back in shape. He's the left tackle. You have George Fant at right tackle. I don't think he's that good. You can get a replacement in there. So all of a sudden, they signed Laken Tomlinson, free agency. All of a sudden, an offensive line that has been an issue will be significantly better.
They need to run the football better. I think this gives them help doing that.
Offensive line really deep. The over-under for number of offensive linemen in the first round, 7.5. And the Jets and Giants going back-to-back with offensive linemen here in Pete's What They Should Do mock. And it's Charles Cross at number 5.
Yeah, and again, get the big guys off the board. The talented big guys, you get them off the board because those guys are usually, when you draft them at these premium spots, most of the time they're plug-and-plays and they last a long time. They're usually really good players. And I think the Giants have Andrew Thomas playing left tackle. Charles Cross has played left tackle, so they're going to have to make a decision. Who goes to right tackle? They tried to get Matt Pert. They drafted him. He hasn't worked out, so I think you have to address the offensive line. All we do when we watch the Giants is what? Watch Daniel Jones take a beating. He just gets brutalized back there. So if you're going to try and do something with him this year, get better on the offensive line. I think this kid is the guy that can help them.
John Mary talked about it, not providing him enough to help him out. I think in this particular spot, you've got to look at the next best available, and it's Charles Cross. He excels in pass protection. We saw that a lot from him last year, but it makes all the sense in the world based on what they've talked about this offseason.
What do they do? What do they do? Do they move Thomas to the right side, or do you move Cross?
I think you keep Thomas at left tackle, and you put Cross at the right
do.
tackle spot, and you allow the rookie to kind of adjust as the year goes on. At least Daniel Jones then as a right-handed quarterback, if there are issues, it's to your front side. You can see it. He's mobile enough to be able to get out and run.
Draft starts to get really interesting at number 6 with the Carolina Panthers, really the first team that you would expect to perhaps go after a quarterback. Pete has them going after a quarterback, but not Malik Willis. Pete has them taking Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the tape, and we've talked about this the entire offseason, he's the best on tape from this past year of all the draftable quarterbacks in this year's class. So the bottom line is, if that's how you're basing this, and I think that's what you're doing here, it makes the most sense. They need a guy to come in and be able to play right away. He's the most NFL ready as well. He's one of the oldest of the class. So in reality, to me, it makes all the sense in the world. I don't know if they make this decision here. They've tried every other way of doing it, bringing in Teddy Bridgewater, bringing in Sam Darnold. So we hear rumors about it being Baker Mayfield. It doesn't really make sense to me. It makes more sense that they end up drafting a quarterback. And if it was me, I would go with Pickett.
And one possibility is they trade down here and still end up getting Pickett. I think that's a possibility.
This is what, their only pick in the first 3 rounds, right?
Yeah. And look, Matt Rule, if he drafts Pickett, does he get another year?
No, it doesn't work like that.
I don't think so either. But you hear Tepper, the owner, wants Pickett. He went to Pittsburgh. He's a Pittsburgh guy. He's followed him.
Is a business school named after him?
It is.
It's a Tepper school of business.
So I think Pickett makes a lot of sense, and they need to get a quarterback. They don't have a quarterback, and until you fix it, you have to keep on addressing it until you fix it.
So that's the first quarterback off the board, number 6 to the Carolina Panthers. Let's move on to the Giants, who are up once again at 7. Pete had him going offensive line with Charles Cross at 5. And this is the guy right now, Javon Walker, the odds-on favorite to be the number 1 overall pick. He's minus 200 now to be number 1. You have him down at 7.
Yeah, because I think he's a guy, like what we mentioned, fit. I don't think he fits in Jacksonville. I think he would fit with the Giants. He could step in there. They like guys that can do a lot of different things on the defensive line. He's not really an edge rusher, although I think he can be an edge rusher at times. I think he put his hand on the ground. He can get down and rush from the inside. He's a really good football player. He's tough. He's physical. He's nasty. What he isn't is hand on the ground, up the field, explosive. Have that explosion. And I think that's the concern with him, but he's going to be a good football player for a long time.
I'll just put it this way. I heard from someone during the course of the season about Javon Walker, started watching him more and more, and you could see all the ability. You see the upside. You see the measurables, the way he performed, and how he pops on film at times. What you just put out there right now, though, is true. I think there could be some concern for that learning curve. His development, too, as far as how fast he can get up to speed. I mean, he's risen a lot over the course of this past offseason compared to where we were a year ago. We're having this conversation about who would be potentially one of the top picks. His name was not involved in this group. So, but heard during the course of the season that this was a guy that the Giants probably be looking at, too. And so it makes a lot of sense. And I think if they could get Charles Cross and Javon Walker, you're going a long way in solving some of the issues you've got right now.
You know, when you watch Walker, there are moments where you go, oh, wow. But there are a lot of moments where at times he looks like the third or fourth best defensive lineman on the field for that team. And I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, between Jordan Davis and Devontae White,
and then the Nolan Smith kid from next year, and
Jalen
Carter for next year. I mean, across the board.
It could be the case. That might be the case when it's all said and done.
And certainly as a pass rusher, at times they look better than he does.
Yeah, he's still got some development, and that's the bottom line.
But he's a good football. He's a tough kid.
It is still amazing, though, that he is the odds-on favorite, the only player that you have to pay juice for to be the #1 overall pick at -200 there. Pete has him going 7th to the Giants. Let's go to the Falcons at 8. Another potential quarterback selected here. Not you, Pete. You're going with Sauce.
I think in the end they will take Malik Willis. I keep hearing that the owner wants Malik Willis. He's an Atlanta kid. He picks him, he puts him in there, and you develop him a year behind Marcus Mariota. But that's not what I would do. I would take Sauce Gardner. I think in this scenario, you get A.J. Terrell on one side, you get Sauce Gardner on the other, and you have your two corners for a long, long time. And when you have two guys who can cover like that, you can do a lot of different things on defense. That will help a pass rush that's been awful for the Falcons for a long time. So I think Sauce Gardner makes sense.
Yeah, I think he's one of the best players available. To me, he's the best cornerback in this draft class based on what he put on film really throughout the course of his career, in particular this past season. But to your point, I have a hard time believing they're going to pass up on a quarterback. You talked about, hey, they'll be able to draft, Malik Willis and then be able to let him sit. He's not sitting. I mean, they're going to take him at the spot, I think, if he doesn't go sooner, and they're going to put him in relatively soon. That's just the trend of what we've seen. You've advocated for it more than anyone, so I'm a bit surprised to hear you talk about Marcus Mariota leading the way for them. It'll be Malik Willis day one if they take him in this spot.
No, if I pick him, I'm playing him. I've always said that. You know that. But I just think that's how some teams will handle it. And you sign Mariota, you say, I got a veteran, let him play.
I think the question you have to ask yourself, if you're Atlanta, if you can solve the quarterback position, and they obviously still need that, you draft Malik Willis here, you find a cornerback that you feel more comfortable with later on in the draft, that I think you could make that starter, whether it's in second or third round of the draft.
Me personally, I don't love his game. So that's why I wouldn't take him in this spot. I understand.
Him being Malik Willis.
Yeah, I understand why they would take him, but I wouldn't take him.
Okay, so let's move on to the Seahawks, another team that might be taking a quarterback early. They have the #9 pick, and Pete going cornerback again, Derek Stingley Jr.
Yeah, and this goes against their beliefs because they haven't drafted a corner in a long time.
He's never done it.
In the first round.
In Seattle.
Yeah, right. And for the first time, and it's been a way long time ago in the first round. So it goes against what they believe. But you look at their corner situation, it's awful. And I think they need to get much better on the corner because it's been a big part of their defense for a long time. Stingley is a kid who might be the first corner taken, but there's some major concerns about him. Injuries, people around the league question his attitude. By the way, I'm going to put this out there because I've heard this in recent weeks, that the Seahawks love Sam Howe and might actually consider Sam Howe in this spot. Now that would be interesting. I wouldn't do that either, but I
might be able to get Sam Howe in the second round.
I don't think so. To be honest with you.
I think the more you talk to people, the more there's a lot of different opinions or varying opinions on who those, the top quarterbacks are. I think this year is one of those classes where we could see a lot of surprises in the first round. So probably not outside the realm of
surprise you? 9
It doesn't
for
surprise
Sam
me
Howe?
because I've got him a lot higher. We talked about the quarterback class this year, where I've got some guys pushed back a little further. Like I don't have Matt Corral as high at all.
I don't either.
I've got Sam Howell ahead of him.
I do too.
Desmond Ridder ahead of him. So there's again, it's the eye of the beholder. But in regards to this pick, it is interesting because you're going away from that, what you talked about, how they don't value cornerbacks in the Robert Saleh system, which really stems from Seattle. I view it differently. I actually think they have to have cornerbacks who can play on islands at times, in that cover 3 match zone, in man-to-man at times when they choose to play it. Because if they don't, none of that really works. And we've actually seen that get a little bit exposed as the Legion of Boom moved on, as when you didn't have as good of cover players on the outside. They're not holding up for the pass rush, and the pass rush isn't getting there either to force the football out. So it works hand in hand, but the reality is they do need talented players out there at the cornerback spot too in order to make that defense go. So he could be very well best player available. The only problem is the risk you take. His best football was a few years ago, and that can be concerning, I think, for any decision maker where you're going to look at yourself after the first year. If he's not coming along going, what were we thinking, going back and looking at that pick. But he's immensely talented. He could very well be the best, cornerback in this class.
Got to match up with the Super Bowl champs. And we know the Super Bowl champs like to throw the football around a little bit.
LA Rams. Let's move on to number 10. The Jets, second of 2 picks. Pete, you had him taking Ike Ekwonu first. Going Garrett Wilson, wide receiver here. Would that be a better move, in your opinion, than trading this pick for a Deebo Samuel?
Yes. And the reason being, you're getting a player, and he's not going to cost you a boatload. I'm not a big believer a lot of times of trading and paying. I think sometimes that can backfire on you. Where did Deebo Samuel come? Second round. And you look at all the guys who've been traded and received the big contracts this offseason, almost all of them were taken after the first round, the only exception being Amari Cooper. And he wouldn't have been traded if his contract wasn't bloated. So I think what you do in this scenario is you draft Garrett Wilson. And if you go what they did earlier with Ekwonu and come back and get Garrett Wilson, what are they doing? They're building it around their young quarterback. They're helping him in a lot of ways because Zach Wilson is their quarterback. So why not get a big play threat in Garrett Wilson?
You know, I think there's been a lot of hype around this wide receiver class, and it is a good class, don't get me wrong. But if I'm the Jets, and they've got to figure out what they've got in Zach Wilson now. You just made a pick to help him out at the tackle spot. I would rather have a known commodity and a guy who knows our system because of Mike McDaniel, right? You know, their OC there. Or excuse me, he originally came from San Francisco.
Yeah, he did.
His name escaped me.
Yeah.
But my whole point is I'd rather have a known commodity at wide receiver come in that knows the system to help my quarterback now.
LaFleur's brother.
Rather than LaFleur, thank you, Mike LaFleur. Rather than wait on what that's going to end up being once Garrett Wilson gets there. Now, I think Garrett Wilson's NFL ready, but again, doesn't know the system, might take some time to develop that chemistry with Zach Wilson. You can say the same thing about Deebo Samuel, but at least he knows the system, and you have a pretty good idea of how to use them and what to get out of them. So
you're also going to be paying him $27 million.
But does that really matter as much? I mean, they're not going to pay him $27 million. He'll make probably somewhere between 20 and 25. He obviously doesn't want to take $20 million or whatever's been offered at San Francisco, but the reality is, at the end of the day, if it all works out and he makes your quarterback where you hope he's going to be, that's all that matters. It's seeing what you have in it. Because the other thing is they could trade back and they could still get a quality wide receiver in this class.
Well, that's awesome. But here's the problem. Nobody wants to trade up, Brady. Right now, nobody's trying to
unless you've got a team that likes one of the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
All right, that's the top 10 for Pete Prisco in his What They Should Do mock draft here. And he has the Jets going with Garrett Wilson there with their second of 2 top 10 picks. Ike Ekwonu, number 4 overall. The Giants also with 2 top 10 picks. Charles Cross, Javon Walker. Pete likes Evan Neal going number 1 to the Jaguars, followed by Aiden Hutchinson to the Lions. And the only quarterback in the top 10, Kenny Pickett, number 6 overall to the Panthers. Pete Prisco taking center stage here this hour on HQ. It's the Who They Should Draft mock. And he has Jacksonville going with Evan Neal, number 1 overall. The only quarterback in the top 10, Kenny Pickett, number 6 to the Panthers. We just had our first wide receiver go off the board, Garrett Wilson to the Jets at 10. And at number 11, Pete is going with a wide receiver as well. Chris Hassel, Brady Quinn, Pete Prisco with you. The Commanders at 11 taking Drake London out of USC.
Yeah, and this is one of those picks where you need to get a bigger receiver. They need a bigger bodied guy. They have a lot of little guys. If you talk about a speed guy, they have De'Ami Brown, who they feel like he's going to have a breakout season this year. He flashed at times, got hurt last year, got COVID. So I think that's one of those situations where they expect bigger things from him. So get a big body receiver. You got a new quarterback in Carson Wentz. Get him some help. And Drake London's one of those guys. He's a 50-50 guy. I think he runs better than people give him credit for not on the clock, on the field. He's never going to be run by people like some of these other receivers, but I think this makes a lot of sense for Washington.
I think with that logic, that's what you're really going for, is just, a guy you can throw it up to in the red zone, really. Give you that rebounder, if you will, down in the post. And that's what he brings. Now, he can do some stuff with the ball after the catch, and you see that from from time to time. He's a tough runner. And again, you're making a draft pick to invest in the quarterback position when you bring in a guy like Carson Wentz. You're trying to maximize the options that you're giving him to try to keep up with the firepower within this division. And I think you're going to see that obviously from the Dallas Cowboys. It really comes down to where will Philly kind of mix in all this. But I do think Washington's right there. When you really look at that roster and their capability of this team when healthy, if Wentz can replicate, at least statistically, what he did last year for the Colts, adding London to this group, it would definitely create some issues. So I don't mind the pick. I don't have him as that next best wide receiver in this class. And I also think you might be able to grab him a little later on, in the first round. This might be overdrafting him a bit.
Yeah, well, I think Wilson would be in play here if he were there. Also, Kyle Hamilton would probably be in play here, I think.
For them, yeah, it would make some sense for them.
Yeah.
Hamilton, yeah, still on Pete Prisco's board here. Again, this is not who he thinks they will take. It's who he wants them to take. The Vikings at number 12, taking Jordan Davis, the defensive tackle out of Georgia. Pete, why do you think he'd be such a great complement to those Vikings defensive
Because
line?
I think when you look at the two interior guys that are going to start, probably be Dalvin Tomlinson and Harrison Phillips. They're good players. But I think they can get a dominant player. And if you can get pressure on the inside nowadays, we just see that with Aaron Donald. And I'm with Brady. I think Davis is going to be a much better inside rusher than people will give him credit for. He's fast, he's explosive, he's got good hands, he's a power player. He will be a dominant. He will be a lot like, what, Albert Haynesworth in his prime, maybe? And if you can get that out of him, I think you have to take him in this spot.
I love him in this spot. Makes all the sense in the world, for the roster for reasons you mentioned. I just think he will probably get drafted higher than this, in my opinion. Again, you see his athleticism more on display, not on film, but really in the drills because of where he plays and what he was asked to do. I mean, there's a reason why Kobe Dean and Quay Walker and all these other players were able to have so many tackles. This dude, when he wasn't penetrating and making tackles for loss, he was keeping guys off of those guys at the next level to allow them to fire their gun and go make plays. So I don't know that he makes this far, to be quite honest with you, but if he does, it'd be a slam dunk for the Minnesota Vikings.
And if Stingley or Sauce Gardner, which I don't think will happen, had fallen to this spot, I think this would be a perfect spot for them because they got to get a cornerback to go with Patrick Peterson.
Peterson's not doing it for you?
No, Patrick Peterson will be
there
for
to go
a year.
with him. They got a tandem.
Yeah,
our guy, Pat Pete.
I know what you meant, Pat Pete. Let's go to the Texans again. Pete, am I reading this right? You have him going with another edge rusher after taking Kayvon Thibodeau?
Yes. The more the merrier, baby. Because here's why. Again, rush the passer. If you could rush the passer in this league, you have a big advantage over a lot of teams. So get one, get two. You can never have enough of those guys, and that's why I put him in this scenario.
Well, I don't know about the logic of drafting two this close together, but I do love this player. I think Jermaine Johnson is going to be awesome to watch at the next level. He had a phenomenal year at Florida State. I think you just saw maybe the beginning of what he's capable of being. You talk about explosiveness and the way he plays off of the edge, the football instincts, all that. You see it all on tape. So I love this pick for Houston. I think it could make a lot of sense. I don't know that they're going to draft two edge rushers, Pete, but again, I think he's a guy that's going to go earlier in the first round than maybe some people out there have him slotted right now.
Ravens are coming up at 14. And Pete has him taken Tyler Linderbaum, who's a center. Now, this would be the highest a center has gone in 29 years if he goes at number 14. You guys think he could go even higher than that?
I think there's the potential of that. A lot of people have fallen in love with his ability, not only to kind of run point, but he really comes from an NFL system when you look at what Kirk Ferentz and Iowa's asked him to do. A lot of scouts, people in the front offices are really high on him. It just depends on whether you're concerned about putting a premium on him, basically drafting him in the spot. Is that too high to draft a center? At the end of the day, I think if he's helping out in pass pro and whoever that quarterback is, or Lamar Jackson in this case, whether it's a tackle or offensive center, you need it everywhere. You need your five best players up front. So I have no problem with this because I think he's by far and away the best interior offensive lineman, in particular at center, though, in this draft.
And they had issues at center last year. Now they have Patrick McCarry, who played tackle last year, but he's going to go in and play center. But they need to get a real center. They need to get a center who can be there for a long time and develop with Lamar Jackson. I had a personnel guy tell me that Linderbaum is the highest-rated center he's ever had, ever. And that's high praise because this guy's been around for a long time. So I'm with you, Brady. I think this would make a lot of sense in the middle. He's Jason Kelce is who he is. If you want to look for a comparison, the Eagles center has been an all-pro, Pro Bowler a lot of his career. That's who he is, an athletic guy who can get up to the second level. He's not going to be a dominant inside guy with big people on his nose, but he's smart and tough.
He's tough. He knows how to work his way to the second level, and we talked about it. I heard from one, don't be surprised if you don't see him, find his way into the top 10. I mean, that's how much people think of him as far as the evaluation.
I wouldn't take a center probably this high. Higher than this. 14's a good spot, but I wouldn't take him in the top 10. Nope.
Ryan Wilson had him in the top 10 a few different mock drafts quite a while ago, maybe 6 months ago. Then he kind of fell back toward the end of the first round, now climbing up once again. Eagles at 15, and it's Jamison Williams, the speedster out of Alabama.
Because I think the Eagles have receivers. Now, you need to get better, but for the interim, they can get by with what they have until Williams is ready. Hey, there was a video out today. He's jogging a little bit now. He's doing some drills. This is the best receiver in this draft class. If he were healthy, he'd be a top 10 pick, no doubt. He can help him in the return game when he gets healthy. He's one of those guys that can take the short pass and turn it into the big play. He can also get deep. I love him as a player, and I think the Eagles can take him in this spot.
Can you imagine him next to Devontae Smith?
Awesome.
All that other speed they've got on the roster.
And Jalen Hurts, you got to develop. It's your time.
And he knows a little bit about these guys too. I look at him and go, wow. I mean, that would be a crazy combination of speed and receivers. Would love to see it. It's hard to know what Philly thinks about the torn ACL and really the timetable of him being able to help impact, being a part of Jalen Hurts this year. Because that's really the question: is if you're drafting him to help provide Jalen Hurts that extra ammunition, is he even going to be able to be there for the extended season? Are they going to be cautious with him moving forward?
I think he'll be there for the October, November.
Yeah. I mean, possibly. I mean, that's the hard thing is they're being so much more cautious now with bringing guys back from torn ACLs. It's now closer to 12 months where they really want to kind of put them out there and put them in a contact sport. That being said, again, to your point, if he didn't get hurt, he would have been somewhere maybe in the top 10 as far as the speed and everything else that he displayed. The 20-plus yard catches. Everyone's trying to find that guy. Everyone's trying to find Tyreek Hill. Jamison Williams has that that sort of quality about his top end speed and making big plays.
Pete Prisco's mock draft rolls on. Just one quarterback in the top 15. That was Kenny Pickett at 6 to the Panthers. It's the Saints at number 16. They have 16 and they have 19. Could be in the market for a quarterback here, but it's Chris Olave, the wide receiver out of Ohio State.
Did you look at a quarterback here? Because you got them going with Chris Olave, but I feel like there's still a concern there for.
Yeah, I considered quarterback here. When I looked at it, I think they need to get another receiver to help Jameis Winston this year. There's a feeling inside the Saints building that they can compete this year, maybe get to the postseason and see what happens. And so if that's the case, they need to get another wide receiver. Yeah. I think Michael Thomas, he's coming back, but we don't know what he is. We don't know what he's going to do. And if he does come back and he's the same Michael Thomas, well, now you got a big guy and you got a smaller guy, a faster guy. So it gives you two different type of options for Jameis Winston. I think this would make sense. But, yeah, quarterback definitely in play here.
You have two of the most precise route runners in the NFL if Michael Thomas comes back and he's anything what he used to be. Olave's got all those same qualities, obviously both Ohio State Buckeyes, but it'd be a huge lift, whether it's for Jameis Winston or another quarterback, depending on what you have them doing here later on in the draft with your picks. Still
just one quarterback. Let's move on to the Chargers. Obviously, do not need a quarterback. They have Justin Herbert, but got to get him some help. Pete, you got him going with Tyler Smith. He's number 10 ranked offensive lineman in our composite. Why do you like him more than that?
That composite needs to get reevaluated, I can tell you that, because the league people love him. Absolutely love him. He is a nasty, violent, tough, physical player, plays right through the whistle, knocks guys to the ground. He almost pushes the envelope, and I love that. I really do. He played left tackle for Tulsa. I think he moves to the right side in this scenario. Gives him a nice bookend. Gets Storm Norton off the field because he had a real problem last year at right tackle.
Spinning top?
Yeah, one of them, many a time. But now you get a guy who can play right tackle to go with Rashawn Slater at left tackle. You have bookends for a long time for your quarterback. I think that's a great pick for the Chargers.
Not the biggest guy, but you talked about it. He's got a mean streak. He's what they call a last touch guy. He's the one always agitating, kind of touching the guy across from him. He moves well, though. I'll say that. I mean, he's one of the more athletic offensive linemen, too, in this year's class. So it makes a lot of sense based on the need for the Chargers and, again, trying to beef up that offensive line to help protect Justin Herbert.
Isn't it funny? 6'4", 324. You're not a big guy anymore.
Well, it's not
he's
so
a right
much
tackle.
That. Well, again, it's not so much that. I'm just saying I'll be curious to see what he plays at. We get some of these numbers sometimes. Guys put on a bunch of weight.
But he looks more like a right tackle than a left tackle.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. But I just think some of these guys too. You see him on film, you're going, he look the way maybe he just moves that well. Then
he moves
for his
well.
size,
yeah.
But he looks like he plays a little lighter than what some of those numbers are.
Eagles up again at 18 after Pete had him going with Jamison Williams at 15, and it's a safety, but it's not Kyle Hamilton.
No, he's a nickelback. He's not.
He's a safety. And by the way they use their guys, they can move them all around in different spots. I think this kid, Jalen Petrie, is so versatile. He's going to be, whoever gets him, he's going to be a chess piece like Honey Badger. That's what he's going to be. You move him around, you can play him in the slot, you can play him in the middle, you can play him doing whatever, blitz him, you can play in the run. I love his game, and he's the guy that I think the Eagles would take. They need help in the secondary. He can provide it a bunch of different ways.
He'll play corner nickelback. That's what he'll play. That's where he's best utilized because he's good at being able to kind of be that edge defender out there in space.
Badger.
Good matching up. All those things you're talking about. I don't think you want to waste him, putting him so far away back from the ball in middle field coverage, half field coverage. So that's why I say he's a nickelback, he's a cornerback.
But he's like Honey Badger. The way they used him a lot.
I like Jalen Petre's cover skills better than I do Tyrann Mathieu. I think he can match up versus wide receivers at the next level.
That's high praise.
He did that during his time there in Baylor. And I don't think you want to put the Honey Badger in that position all the time, even though he can from time to time. But you know, I love this kid's tape. I loved watching him this year. Got to see him up close and personal, and just the way his tenacity, the way he plays. There's a football instinct too to it. When you're talking about Honey Badger, that's what I think of.
Yeah.
Like this kid just knows ball. He's got a feel for it. Jalen Petre is the exact same way. And to Pete's point, we don't see him mocked up as much in the first round. This kid's going to go in the first round.
But he was on your better than team, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Just love him. Let's move on to the Saints. Pete had him passing up on a quarterback a few picks ago, passing on a quarterback again, going with another offensive lineman out of Iowa, this one Northern Iowa.
Again, it goes back to my theory that they think they can at least make the postseason as a wild card team, bare minimum, and so you got to get the left tackle. They lost Armstead to Miami. They have a major hole at left tackle. They need to address that. You get Trevor Penning. He steps in there. Talk about a nasty guy. Defensive lineman hated him at the Senior Bowl, and I thought he went a little overboard, by the way, sometimes.
There's some holding going on there, too.
And I get it. I get a little turned off by that. Come on, just play through the play and then go on. It's practice. It's the Senior Bowl. We all clap for you. Great, you're a tough guy. But he's a good player. He will be their left tackle.
Finally, the second quarterback goes off the board at number 20 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's not Malik Willis. It's Desmond Ridder.
If you look at the history of the Steelers, they like taller quarterbacks, bigger quarterbacks. Ben Roethlisberger was a bigger quarterback. Desmond Ridder is a bigger quarterback than Malik Willis. I think he sees the field better. I think he will be able to stand in there. I think Desmond Ridder is one of the more underrated players in this draft. When you look at his body of work, all he did was win games. He won a lot of games. He took a program at Cincinnati and elevated it to a playoff team. Think about that. That tells you a lot about him. There's some issues with accuracy at times, and you know better than me. Mechanics, I think, can be in play there. But I think he's going to be a great pick for whoever gets him. And in this scenario, he would be the quarterback in waiting for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
He checks every box, and it would make a lot of sense for Pittsburgh. And you say quarterback in waiting, but I think he would find his way into that starting role sooner than later because of some of those intangibles. But as far as the athleticism,
like 2 games. That's what I mean. Quarterback in waiting for 2 games.
But, you know, he's got the athleticism to impact, I think, scrambling, running game, buying time, all those things that I think you saw him do at Cincinnati. The accuracy is what you're alluding to. There's some inconsistencies there. The thing I like about him, though, is he's gotten better and better and better. Every time you saw him, whether it was the Senior Bowl or watch him kind of drop his comfort, even dropping from under center, which he wasn't asked to do a ton at Cincinnati, he seems comfortable doing it. And he kind of reminds me a little bit of Jalen Hurts in the sense of how we saw Jalen Hurts from Alabama to Oklahoma to the NFL just get better and better and better the more reps he gets. That's what I think Desmond Ridder is. I'm excited to see if he does go to Pittsburgh, what they can be, because I think it would be a great asset for that.
What do you think of his arm? It's not great, but it's good enough.
No, it's good enough. And that's all it needs to be. And by the way, I don't know that many of the guys in this class have special arm talent. Malik Willis is probably that one.
He has the best.
Carson Strong is probably up there. But the rest of them, they can all get it done. There's no one I'd look at this class and go, oh, he can't, doesn't have a strong enough arm.
I agree.
They wouldn't be in the conversation if that was the case.
Malik Willis still on the board. Matt Corral still on the board. Sam Howe still on the board. Recapping picks 11 through 20 from Pete Prisco in his Who They Should Draft mock. He had the Commanders going with wide receiver Drake London, 11th overall. A couple more wide receivers going 15 and 16. Jameson Williams to the Eagles at 15. Chris Olave to the Saints at 16. Continuing on with Pete Prisco's Who They Should Draft mock, Evan Neal went 1 to the Jaguars. Kenny Pickett 6 to the Panthers. Garrett Wilson, the first wide receiver off the board, to the Jets. And then a bunch more wide receivers in the teens, Jameson Williams included. Number 15 to the Eagles. Desmond Ridder, the second quarterback off the board, number 20 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's get to 21 and the New England Patriots. I'm Chris Hassel, joined by Brady Quinn and Pete Prisco making this pick. Pete, you're going with Utah linebacker Devin Lloyd here.
Yeah, I am. And you look at their linebackers, Dante Hightower no longer there. They need speed at that position.
Doesn't it remind you of Hightower as far as his versatility?
Yeah, he can put his hand on the ground. He can go up and rush from the outside. I mean, he can do so many different things, and I think he fits with what New England wants. Scheme versatility is so important to Bill Belichick in that defense. If you could do a bunch of different things, it's great. I considered a guy in this spot that can do a bunch of different things and come down and play like a linebacker, Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame, but in the end, I went with Devin Lloyd from Utah.
Doesn't Bill usually go with defense too in the first round?
Yeah.
More often than not, he goes on the defensive side of the ball.
Last year went with Mac Jones as the franchise quarterback, off to a pretty good start. Packers at 22, wide receiver, maybe a little bit later in the first round. Not here. This is Finally, Kyle Hamilton's turn in your mock.
This will seem like a strange pick, but when you look at where they are as a defense, Adrian Amos turns 30. He's entering the last year's contract. You're going to have to do something with the other safety, Savage, so you got some issues there contract-wise. So why not get a young player? Not only that, I think he can help them and come in and nickel and play down in the dime, dime linebacker in scenarios where those guys are both on the field. So it gives them some versatility on the defensive side.
He's gigantic. I mean, he's got a really big, wide frame. I would not be shocked if he doesn't transition into that role. You kind of saw that with Isaiah Simmons a little bit more, where everyone's talking about him coming out of Clemson. Well, where do you put him? Well, eventually he just finds his way down around the football, and you can do some really unique things with him. Now, look, he's going to match up versus every tight end, running back, all that, no problem. You know, will he play some safety coverage? Sure, but it allows you to really disguise what you want to do, putting him down in the box at times and putting him in the deep half, deep middle, you know, however you end up devising it. But he's got great football instincts, just rare size and athleticism. I know some people want him to be a little bit twitchier. It's hard when he's 6'4" and he's as long as he is. I'm telling you, when you see him in person, it's different. He reminds you more of a basketball player type build because of how tall and how long he is.
But he's not Derwin James. I mean, people compare him to Derwin James. I don't see that at all. Well, I don't think he's as twitchy as Derwin James.
No, he's not as twitchy, but I also think he does as good of a job, if not better, of getting to the football, getting his hands on the football, the knack of reading the football instincts and all that. I think that's where he ends up providing a ton of value for it. It could make sense for the Packers.
I've had a lot of GMs tell me that he's got to play closer to the line of scrimmage. They're concerned about him playing back. I mean, that would be a concern.
I've got zero concerns about that with him. I mean, there's documented tape on that. So if they want to try that, go ahead. You'll see someone using
everybody shows the Florida State play when he went from one hash to the other. Great, that's a great play. But there's also plays, if you watch his tape, where he gets spun around at times in coverage. I don't think he's great in coverage.
Well, everyone's trying to manipulate him in coverage. I mean, that's the bottom line. In the NFL, there's not quite as much time.
Where would you draft him? Because we have him number 1 on the board.
Well, I don't know that I put him number 1 on the board. I think there's other players you could put him there. It really depends upon, you know, the need of that particular team. For Green Bay, for the reasons you laid out, it makes all the sense in the world. But I think you look at a team like New York Giants, for example. If they really fall in love with him, you know, he could find himself somewhere in the top 10 when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I see they have Xavier McKinney they drafted a couple years ago.
I think he's a completely different player, though.
Yeah, I wouldn't take him.
His over-under draft position right now is 10.5. To the Cardinals at 23. They lost Chandler Jones in free agency. So, Pete, you have him taking George Karlaftis, the edge out of Purdue.
And for some reason, this guy gets pinged down the board, a lot of draft boards. And he might end up going higher than where I have him going. I think he's a really good football player. And he's one of those guys that you're going to put in there, and he's going to be in there for a long time making plays. What, Max Crosby? Yeah. I mean, is that who he is? That's the kind of player he is. He's tough, he's physical, he plays hard, he makes plays, and the Cardinals need edge help. And put him on a line and let him line up and get after the quarterback.
Makes sense for the fit, makes sense for the position and the value that's usually, you know, goes along with that, playing off the edge. To me, it was talking to the Notre Dame staff after they played him this past year, and they played against a number of edge rushers, and they said, look, when we go back through the past few years, he was one of the more talented edge rushers as far as his variety of moves, work ethic, all the things you're looking for. Their game plan was largely centered around limiting his impact. So that's the ultimate compliment you can give an edge rusher.
He was our top-rated edge rusher going into this past college football season at CBSSports.com. Let's move on to the Cowboys at 24, going offensive lineman here out of A&M, Kenyon Green.
They need help in the interior of their offensive line. Not necessarily where Zach Martin's playing, but you could probably look on the other side at left guard, and that would make a lot of sense there. To me, he's a road grader. I think he makes a lot of sense inside. He's got some versatility, though. He moved around, played some different spots throughout the course of his time at Texas A&M. So I like this pick.
Right tackle, too. He could play right tackle, and they need a right tackle. Got rid of Collins. So
I don't know that I see him out there, but if they need him to, he can play.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Versatility again. And he's going in the first round, by the way. He's not. If any mocks that don't have him in the first round, I keep hearing from a variety of people in the league that he will be a first-round pick.
So it's a fraud mock if he doesn't go in the first round.
Yeah, fraud.
Okay,
fraud.
Let's call him out. All right, let's move on to the Bills, the Super Bowl favorites at number 25, and it's cornerback Kyler Jordan out of Washington. Pete, is cornerback the only position of need for this team?
It's the only hole. You know how you talked about Cleveland not having any holes last year? There's no hole on this team other than corner. They need a corner. You got Tre'Davious White's coming off his injury. You also have Levi Wallace left. So you need a corner, and I love Kyler Gordon. I think he's a heck of a player. Can play inside, can play outside. They don't need a slot corner because they got Taron Johnson, but he's going to play outside for them, and he's a big physical kid. He can lock up in man coverage. I think he's better than McDuffie, so I would take Gordon in this spot.
A lot of these Pac-12 players, kind of odd, you know, given that Pete went to a Pac-12 school.
Yeah, but I don't root for anybody but one bad team.
I'm just saying, we'll see.
One bad team that will win 2 games this year.
We'll see. No, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, he could fit in their system. He's a talented player. You love what you see on tape. What they asked him to do in Washington.
Andrew Booth is a possibility here from Clemson, but he's got some injury issues that are concerning.
McCreary, there's a few other guys you could throw into the list as far as
little short arms from McCreary.
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just
we'll see.
Just putting corners out there for you.
We'll see.
Titans are up at 26. Pete has him going with Boston College offensive lineman Zion Johnson.
Yeah, talk to me about this pick, though, because I think you could make the case for, maybe a wide receiver at this spot, given what's going on, who knows, with A.J. Brown. I mean, you could make the case for another position. So what was the thought process?
Well, which wide receiver are you going for in this spot? Because, I mean, most of the...
Well, I could say Tyquan Thornton. I know you'd sign up for that all day.
Oh, I would, but I don't think anybody else would.
It's your mock.
Yeah, but you know why I went here? Because this is a team that wants to be run heavy. And if you look at their offensive line, the guards struggle in a big way.
Sure.
And Ben Jones is 32 and is coming back on a 2-year deal.
Yeah.
This kid, it can play guard and center. I think he's going to be their center of the future. Everybody raves about him as a center. You remember, he didn't play center.
I was hoping you just said best player available.
He went to the Senior Bowl and played center and practiced playing center, and they loved him. I think he's going to be a dominant center in the league, and I think that's what he'll ultimately be.
All right.
Bucks at 27, going defensive tackle Devontae Wyatt.
Well, you got Vita Vea, so you need another guy next to him. I mean, Ndamukong Suh, they still don't know if he's coming back or not. And if he doesn't come back, you need to get somebody in there.
Either way, right? He's coming back for another year, and then that's maybe it. So it makes a lot of sense from that standpoint. That's the strength, too, I think, of that defense, is that front when they're getting after it. He's, to my opinion, that next D tackle you're looking at in this class available.
You know, it's funny, when you watch the Georgia tape, a lot of the time he's making many more plays than Javon Walker is. I mean, that's who he is. Now, there are some teams that have some character concerns on him, but which might drop him down, but he's a heck of a player on the interior.
Pete Prisco's mock. Pete's here along with Brady Quinn. I'm Chris Hassel. We're at 28, the Packers. After Pete had him taking Kyle Hamilton with their first pick in the first round, this is where you do go wide receiver.
Yeah, I go Treylon Burks from Arkansas, and they need a big-bodied receiver. I mean, that's something they need. They have Alan Lazard, but I think they need a younger, big-bodied receiver. Plus, he runs better than people think. There is concern that he has a tendency to get a little heavy at times, and that is an issue because it makes him play slower. He didn't play that well in terms of his 40 time. So, but I'd still give him a receiver. Treylon Burks makes sense.
Finally, what has it been, 2 decades since the Packers drafted the first round?
Javon Walker.
And Pete Prisco does it for the Green Bay Packers, for Aaron Rodgers and the fan base, everyone there.
Hey,
well done.
Give me your stock. Your Packer stock.
Chiefs coming up with back-to-back picks, another team that might go wide receiver, but Pete, no, you're going at the corner position in Kaiir Elam.
Well, they lost Travarius Ward in free agency, and so they have a hole in the corner, and I think Kaiir Elam is Carlton Davis. That's who he is, of the Bucks. Yeah. Long, athletic corner. Didn't always play consistently at Florida, but you see the talent. And you see the ability to cover people in man coverage. And I think in Green Bay, you would, in Kansas City, you'd pair him with a Jarius Sneed and give yourself a nice combo of long corners in Kansas City.
He's a guy I could see going a little bit higher. I also think edge would be a position here. And we haven't mentioned
that will be addressed in a second.
I know. But that's another player that I'd look at going to the spot. But their defense needs help, bottom line. I know people are saying, oh, they lost Tyreek Hill. They had these draft picks in exchange. Should we be looking to replace that? I don't think so. I think they feel good with where they're at right now.
Yeah, people forget that Josh Allen went up and down the field on him all day. You got to stop that guy.
Yeah,
people forget.
Yeah, people do forget.
Chiefs with their second pick. This is what Brady talked about. They're going edge here with Michigan's David Ojabo.
Yeah, I think this would be a steal. Yeah. I mean, in this spot, he's a top 10, top 12 pick if he's healthy. Tore the Achilles in the pro day. He's going to be a dynamic edge rusher. We talk about explosiveness off the corner. He has it, and I think that would make a ton of sense for the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, Frank Clark didn't play as well. Played better in the postseason, but didn't play as well in the regular season. They need to get more from the edge.
I'm right there with you. And an Achilles injury, too, is one that, honestly, guys, you can come back from sooner than what you're talking about ACLs. Yeah. I mean, 6 months is now what they're kind of looking at. So he could make it back in time. I don't know how much that'll hurt his draft stock, but he's explosive. He can bend. He can do all the things you asked him to do. And he just started playing football in his junior year of high school.
I love him.
So a lot of upside there.
By the way, regular season isn't what it's about for the Chiefs. It's about the postseason.
Good point.
Yeah.
Might need some wide receivers, though. But I guess deep class, you could get it done.
Smith-Schuster and Valdez-Scantling.
Yeah, they've signed those two.
True. Bengals, they don't need a wide receiver. You're going cornerback here, another Washington cornerback in Trent McDuffie.
Yeah, and Eli Apple is on a 1-year deal. They brought him back, and he's not the long-term answer. They need to get another guy. on the corner, and I think Trent McDuffie would make a lot of sense. I considered a couple. They have options here. That's the sign of a good team, is you have options in this spot. I just went with a corner because I think he's going to be immediately not an immediate starter, but he'll be a starter next year.
Well, everyone just remembers the Super Bowl. You're kind of going back, going, all right. If maybe they get a little better cornerback play, maybe it's not as much of an issue. Maybe we're talking about your prediction, coming true.
Well, they fixed the offensive line in the offseason.
Well, now I got to fix the defense.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
2-8.
Yeah, 2-8.
2-8.
Lions, who might start 2-8 again this season, they have they had the second pick, Aiden Hutchinson. You're just going with the Michigan guys. You're keeping them in Michigan here.
Well, if you look at their defense, they have a big hole at safety. They need a playmaker back there, and I think Daxton Hill can play back there and give them the versatility to be able to run sideline to sideline. He's got the speed. He's got the ability to cover in the deep middle. So you get two Michigan guys, and you immediately improve the defense. I would consider quarterback in this spot as well. My problem here was I don't think Malik Willis fits with what they want to do. I'm not sure Sam Howe does, although he would be a possibility as well. I don't think Matt Corral does.
I mean, I love the player as far as his fit. Again, from following Michigan this past year, all the intangibles, the things he brings, along with the guy like Aiden Hutchinson, makes all the sense in the world. That spot, though, usually reserved for someone trading up to.
Well, yeah, and that's what somebody would trade up in this spot to get one of the quarterbacks. If Willis fell here or Howe fell here, then somebody would trade up to.
But why didn't you do trades again in your mock draft?
Because it's too complicated. Plus, when you do trades, what do you make up the compensation? Oh, I'm going to give him this, this, and this. I mean,
hey, use Jimmy Johnson's chart. Come on,
that thing's about 40 years old now.
Yeah,
isn't
they
it?
still use it loosely.
Yeah.
So, Pete, that's your first-round mock. I mean, I think that the biggest storyline there is no Malik Willis.
No, and again, I don't think he's a first-round quarterback in my book. He will go in the first round. Don't get me wrong. He's going in the first round. I just don't think I would take him in the first round. I think he's raw. I think he's got a ton of arm strength. He's got a ton of ability to develop. It's going to take time with him. And he's not a running back, by the way. I just want to put that out there. He's not a running back. He's a quarterback.
That you said he was a running back.
No, that was edited very nicely by somebody to make it look like I said that. But no, he's not a running back. He's a quarterback. He's just going to take some time. And I just don't think that I'm the guy that's going to allow him to take time. Sam Howe is another one that I considered in the first round, but I also, both of them, I think will take a little time.
You have two quarterbacks in the first round?
Yeah, two.
So that's kind of a prop bet out there. I think we tend to see quarterbacks. I think we tend to see quarterbacks get overdrafted. You could see that happening.
It's going over that prop.
The other thing is,
I'm
so
probably
you have it going 4 because the over/under is right at 3. So
I think
you need to get.
I think it's going to end up. And in talking to league people, they think it's going over that.
It'll go over.
It's going to go. Not that they owe the over/under, but they think 4 of it.
That league people are telling you, put the money on the over.
To give Pete credit though, all the big men going. I mean, you're going to see that. There's going to be a run of big men. You're probably not going to see as many wide receivers as we've had mocked up, as well as maybe some secondary.
You're going to see a lot of corners.
You'll see. I don't know if you see that. Maybe the second round, but a lot of big men going early.
That was fun. Was that your last mock, Pete?
No, I got one Thursday.
Whoa, another one. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Pete Prisco, the spinning mock of the week. He's got 2 of them.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.